Welcome. This is a talk on the future of retirement. It's a talk that's being given at York University in Toronto by Thomas Klassen. Welcome. The future of retirement is a topic that concerns us all, whether we're already retired or we're going to be retired, because retirement is a bit like taxes and death. It's going to happen. One of the striking features, though, about retirement is that of all the people who are 65 and over, 2/3 of them are alive today. So we're going into a phase of our future that is still fairly unexplored, that we still don't quite know what retirement is going to look like because relatively few people have experienced it up to now. There are some assumptions about older people that we have, and those assumptions are often incorrect. And I put up here that it's still common for people in their 30s to live at home with parents who are in their 60s or older. It's common for women in their 40s to get pregnant and then to have teenagers when they're in their 60s. It's common for women who are 50 to have children, to have babies, which then means in their 70s they're going to have children in university, in college. It's common for 80-year-olds to run marathons, and as I prepared this presentation, I realized just a few months ago in Toronto, Canada, where we are right now, a few months ago, a man who was 100 completed the Toronto Marathon. He was the first one of that age to ever do it, but I'll bet you there'll be more. There are people who are getting married and divorced in their 90s. And there are, in the world right now, close to 250,000 people who are 100 and over. In 10 years, there'll be over 2 million people 100 and over. So we're going to just see a lot more people having to face what we're going to look at in our talk today, which is the future of retirement. And it's quite different from what I think a lot of people imagine it is all about. So the question we start with always is, what's retirement? Well, it's a bit like love. Hard to define, but you kind of know it when you see it. And for retirement, it's something that happens that we expect will happen, sort of like love. And we're kind of sure, when it happens, we're going to know that's it, that's the right thing. But when we are asked to actually explain it, what is it? That's not so easy, just as with love. How do we define it? Well, some people think of retirement as something that they look forward to, but then when it comes closer, they're not quite so keen. Sort of like getting closer to graduating from a university degree. You look forward to it, you say, well, it's going to be great when I finish, but then as you get closer and you're almost finished, you say, well, maybe I don't really know if this is going to be so good. Because in part, retirement is a transition. It's from going from one thing to another, and any transition is stressful, it's complicated, it isn't always going to work out as planned. We can think about retirement as kind of having 4 possibilities. The first possibility is that it's a period of rest, that we worked hard, we've accomplished what we set out to accomplish, and then we enter a period called retirement. It's a period of rest. The second way to think of retirement is a reward, sort of like collecting points. If you collect a lot of points, you get to pick out a prize or you get a special deal. So retirement is like this special deal that you get after you have collected all the points. And then you can cash those in and get retirement. The third way to think of retirement is it's something that's earned. It's earned because we work hard, we take care of ourselves, we do what is expected or what we plan, and then we get something back. It's earned. And the fourth way to think about retirement, which is how I want to think about it with you today in our talk, is that it's a reinvention, that it's the start. It isn't the end, it's the start. It's a reinvention of who we are. And in that way, we can see that retirement is something that provides us with opportunities, with new ways to proceed. And that is becoming the more common way to think of retirement, not as the end of working or the end of a phase, but as the start of something else, the start of another part of life that provides us, I would argue, with much more opportunity to be who we want to be than any previous phase. We can think of life, our lives, and lives of the people we know as being a cycle where we start in childhood, we go on to become adolescents, then we go on to become young adults, then middle age, and at the end a phase, a stage called old age, or late maturity. And retirement is what happens after middle age and takes us into this next phase. And each of these parts, phases, cycles of our lives are great. Remember childhood, the long summer days that seem to drag on, and the excitement over a particular toy or a particular birthday party. As adolescents, there's the excitement and stress of becoming more independent, of building up your own ideas of what you want to be. As young adults, that's a time of a lot of decisions that have to be made about school, about work, about partners, about starting a family, about employment. Then middle age is often a long phase of life where there's still choices to be made, but often the path is fairly marked out in terms of if you have family responsibilities, those are fairly clearly in place for you. And then we come to where we are for our talk today, which is after middle age. And that takes us, of course, to retirement, because retirement is this transition from middle age to something thereafter. Now, we're still struggling as we have our talk this morning about what it is. What is this thing called retirement? If we don't know what it is, how can we plan for it? How can we get ready for it? How can others help us get ready for it? Politicians, bankers. Well, sometimes the easiest definition of retirement is it's when you turn 65, because 65 has become this marker of, stuff happens to you when you turn 65. You get some discounts, you get stuff that people will give you free stuff sometimes. Or we can think of it as, retirement is when I don't work at my job anymore, that there's some change from what I do for employment. We can think of it as retirement is when I'm eligible for a pension, that I've saved money and I start to get it back. Or we can also think of retirement as when I stop working altogether, paid, unpaid. But as we'll see in a couple of minutes, that's not really such a good definition, because people who are retired don't really stop to work. They may do different kinds of work, but work isn't something that disappears. Who retires? Well, some people don't. Farmers, for the most part, don't retire. Often people who are self-employed don't retire. People in other parts of the world often don't retire. And many people who'd always planned to retire start to change their minds once retirement comes closer, and they say, well, or I don't really want to do this retirement thing as I planned anyways. And often people who have worked at home, taking care of children, taking care of others at home, of course, they don't stop working when they turn a particular age. There's still cooking to be done, cleaning to be done, all kinds of chores to be done, family to be taken care of. So again, who retires isn't as many people as you would imagine, even if we think of retirement as stopping work. Now, what to do to prepare for retirement? How do we make sure we can have a good retirement? And that isn't such a hard question to answer, because there's been a lot of research about who are people who retire successfully, what do they have. The first thing they have is money, which isn't so surprising, because if you don't have money, your retirement isn't as flexible as if you do have money. The second is remain young at heart. Have an approach that keeps you engaged, involved, interested in the world, in your family, in your life. Keep your mind sharp. Intellectual activity is critical at any age, whether you're a child, a young adult, whoever. It remains as critical in older age. Of course, staying healthy as well. Fortunately, most people who are old are still healthy. There's only a small percentage of people who are old and unhealthy, even though that small percentage gets almost all the news coverage. But it is just a small percentage. Now, you don't have to be able to do all these equally well all the time. And some you have some greater control over. But emphasizing these is what results in a successful retirement. I'm going to show you a chart which has a lot of numbers, so don't be too afraid of these. It was prepared by statisticians. It's important, though, because it tells us one important aspect of retirement, which is things that we do every day don't change too much. This is what people do every day. What percentage of their time is spent on different activities. These are people 55 to 64, 65 to 74, and 75 and over. And I've seen this chart many times, and I'm always struck that things don't change. That how many hours we spend sleeping, which is the biggest part of our lives, it doesn't change as we become older. How much time we spend the grooming, and I think statisticians use such great terms. See, I would use grooming for my dog, but they use it for people. It doesn't change. How much time we spend shopping, cleaning our homes, doing other activities, eating and drinking, that doesn't change. The only thing that changes is we spend less time as we get older in this green activity called working for money. And so we have more time for this purple, which is having fun or leisure. But that's the only thing that changes. So everything else in our lives doesn't change. So don't think of retirement as this sudden change where everything is different. The only thing that would change is how much time you spend in paid work. You may still do as much unpaid work, but just paid work changes. The topic of this talk was the future of retirement, and that's where I'd like to spend the next 5 minutes. What can we expect of the future? Well, we can expect that there's going to be more retirement, partly because there are more people retiring, so there's just going to be more retirement. Also because people are living longer, so there's going to be more time for each of us to be retired. But at the same time, people are going to retire at a later age. So that's kind of perhaps for some people not the so good news, but we're going to work a bit longer just because we are living longer. And so it strikes me almost fair to spend some extra time employed when we're going to have a good chance to live into our 90s. We're going to see retirement as something that's less defined. It is less predictable. Or in other words, it's up to us to shape it, whether we want to go back to school when we're retired and do that program that we've thought about that we didn't do when we were 22, or whether we want to start our own business, or we just want to travel more, or whatever it is. There's just going to be more flexibility, partly because there are more people who are going to be retired, and they're going to want to choose for more. Also, there's going to be more phased retirement. Retirement isn't going to be this digital 0 or 1. Not retired, retired. It's going to be something that people slide into slowly, gradually, and often you wake up and you say, am I retired or am I not? I'm not sure. But it depends. We're going to see more debates about retirement. It's going to be in the news a lot more from politicians, from bankers, from employers, because it's going to happen more. It's going to happen in a less predictable way. So it's good for us to talk about it. It's good for politicians to talk about how best to ensure people have the retirement they want. It's good for financial institutions to help people plan. It's good for there to be this debate because retirement is changing, and that's when we tend to have debates. That's when it tends to be in the news. We're going to see that retirement is something that can be shared. Just because one person is retired, it does not mean others can't be retired either. So it isn't a winner take all, or somebody gets it, someone doesn't. We all get it, and we can all approach it in our individual ways. And lastly, I would argue that retirement is going to be the next revolution. And I use that term on purpose because the baby boomers, who are the people who are entering retirement in mass right now, are the people who've created other revolutions in the past 60 years. They were the people who created this revolution in how women are treated. They created a revolution in opening up education to more groups of people. They started the revolution about how we think about our environment, how we think about minority groups. So it isn't surprising that that same group of revolutionaries that took on problems that had an impact on their lives when they were 20, 30, 40 are going to be the revolutionaries who are going to take on retirement and shape that according to what's important to them, which is some of what I've outlined: more flexibility, more creativity in retirement. So we're just starting this revolution because the baby boomers are just turning 65, the first group of them right now. I want to end with a quotation from someone you're probably familiar with, and it's about films. And it's about making films. It's a quotation from someone who's made a lot of films that you've probably seen. And the quotation is that learning to make films is very easy. But learning what to make films about is very hard. And retirement is a bit like a film. It's something you've got to create. And then what it is about, what you want that film to be about, what you want that part of your life to be about, is the hard part. And it's the part that takes planning, that takes, I would argue, knowledge, that takes creativity, and that is retirement. That is the future of retirement. I'd like to thank you all for listening to the lecture, and I wish you all, whether you're already retired or you're going to be retired, the very best for your retirement. Thank you very much.